Hey guys, it's Sean, and I'm here to introduce a new bonus episode that we are bringing to you guys on the ReelBlend podcast. We had the director Amber Sealey join us for her new film, No Man of God, starring Elijah Wood. It reminded me very much of that fantastic David Fincher show, Mindhunter, where agents from the FBI are figuring out how to use interviews with serial killers in order to better understand where and how future crimes are going to take place. Elijah Wood plays one of the earliest agents who got a chance to get in on this program, and in this film in particular, the one that it focuses on is Ted Bundy, which is someplace that Mindhunter didn't get a chance to go to. So it's exciting from that perspective. Amber Sealey dove super deep into research on not just Ted Bundy, but the agents who participated in this program. Really exciting conversation in terms of how to put this movie together and some of the other places where she sees the film industry going. So we were thrilled to have Amber join us on the ReelBlend podcast. And so without further ado, I will throw it to our bonus episode, Amber Sealey on ReelBlend. We always joke that the laziest question in film journalism is what drew you to this project. It's just an awful question.
Tell me about yourself. I hate that. Just tell me about yourself.
Tell me about yourself.
I'm like...
But I was honestly, genuinely curious that with a project like this, you have to live in the mindset of some really dark and disturbing material for a long period of time. And so I was actually wondering, what sort of drew you to this?
What a lazy question.
And if you had any hesitation to take it because of the amount of time that you'd have to spend in the headspace of some disturbing characters.
And also tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Well, goodbye. Let's see. First of all, I was drawn to the project because of SpectreVision. I knew of them and obviously Elijah, and I was a fan of their other films. And I'd heard from, filmmakers talk, right? Those guys, that production company's nice. Those are not, and I'd heard that they were nice. And I was like, curious. So then I got the script and I read the script. And I also really liked that I wasn't an obvious fit for this film, that if you'd been familiar with any of my other work, you wouldn't have thought, oh yeah, let's get Amber Sealey to direct a Bundy movie. Like, it just wasn't a natural fit. And I liked that. And I liked that they were interested in me for that. And I thought, well, wow, if they're willing to hire somebody like me for this film, that means that they're the kind of people that I would want to work with, because they're willing to take risks and do something weird and kind of, a little out of the box, left of center-ish. So I like that. And then obviously I read the script and I loved the script. It was such a smooth read. And so often when you read scripts that get sent to you, you're like, oh my God, I'm falling asleep and I can't, and with this one, obviously there was not that at all. I just read it immediately straight through. So I thought, what the hell, I'll go in and I'll pitch on it and see if it's a nice kind of personality fit or not. And it really was. And so, from there, the interest just grows. I mean, the other thing is that I think, as a director, when you first read a script, you either have a take or you don't, and I just had a take on this. I felt like I had something to say. I felt like I had a, vision is such a sort of, pompous word, but, I had a take that I wanted to do. And I had, stuff that I wanted to add to it. And so, it just, that sort of interest just either hits or it doesn't. And it did with this, as weird as it might seem, my interest as a, kid and growing up was all really cheesy girly movies, like Grease and The Proposal. And, and so I like that. I was like, somebody like that, who likes that kind of rom-com stuff, directing a movie about Bundy, like what is that? And that interested me.
There was a cute meat in this film I found to be odd. I'm just kidding.
The rom-com, it's a rom-com. You didn't get that?
Amber, I was thinking about all of the different Bundy projects that we've seen over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and all of them that I could think of have been directed by men. And I was wondering, I hate to ask questions about someone being one sex or the other sex, but I was curious about being a woman and the perspective that gave you that maybe no one else has had when tackling the subject of Bundy.
Well, I went through, and I have it in front of me because I just opened it up. I went through all the Bundy movies that have existed prior to mine. And I think there are 22 now total, including mine, that have come out. And I could only find one other one that was directed by a woman, The Capture of the Green River Killer in 2008. And I can't remember if that was a documentary or a narrative. There's one other person, there's one other name I'm trying to find on my list here that I wasn't sure. Oh, it's a Ted Bundy natural porn killer in 2006, Sasha, but Sascha Olafson. And I think it's a man. I wasn't totally sure. But so basically, I think there's only been one or two other films, Bundy films, that have been directed by women. So yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I just felt like, look, I know what it's like to walk down a dark alley, hear footsteps behind me, and get scared. That, like, as a woman, you grow up with that. Like, you grow up knowing, always be aware of your surroundings, hold your keys like this in your hand, make sure, you check in with someone, you were just taught that, right? As women growing up. And men, I think, again, generalizing, don't have to have that same fear and anxiety about their personal physical safety out in the world all the time. And so I just felt like, I'm not approaching the film as a female filmmaker, but I'm approaching it with all of my experiences as a woman. Like, I can't take those out of my brain. So what happens is it led me to go, well, what do the victims think of all this? What do they feel like? So that led me to add that aspect to the film of the women in the movie. So all of those essentially background actors, we dress them as the victims. You see they're looking directly at Bill and Bundy, and then they eventually take their gaze and direct it to us, the audience, kind of asking that larger question of, why are you so interested in this guy? Why do you know his name and not my name? And and just kind of, setting the gaze back on all of us. And, me as well, I'm as guilty as anybody, because I'm making this movie, I'm putting another Bundy film out into the world. But why is it that we all are so fascinated with things like this, And I don't think there's an easy solution to that. I think there's, there are both good reasons and bad reasons why we're really interested in the trauma of others. So I'm not really passing judgment on that per se. I'm just asking the question, Anyway, sorry, I went off there, but
no, that was great. Thank you.
I would like you to sort of.
And now tell me about myself.
If you notice too, we started both of our questions by saying, "I hate to ask you this, and we don't do this." I'm going to branch away from that briefly. What were you looking for in your actor when you were casting Ted, or did Luke come with the project?
No, Luke didn't come with the project. Luke, I forced him. I was like, "You're going to do this." Luke. I mean, I used to be an actor. I love actors. It's like it just gives me such joy to work with actors. And so casting is really important to me. And I always really want to cast actors who are the kind that are willing to just jump all the way into the water. Like, acting is not about dipping your toe in. You got to either jump in or not, because at the end of the day, if you film something that you don't need, that's fine. It ends up on the cutting room floor and you don't need it, but you got to try it, and you got to try it 100% and really be willing to play. And I just have been a fan of Luke's forever. I saw him in, he's Canadian. He was in a Canadian show called Slings and Arrows a long time ago. I saw that. And then obviously I was a fan of his work from Sarah Polley's film Take This Waltz, and from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And so I don't know, I was like, oh my God, Luke Kirby, he would be an amazing Bundy. And then I started pulling together photos of him and photos of Bundy, and like I'd look for a photo of Luke kind of making this sort of face, and then a photo of Bundy, and they oddly looked like really similar. And so then I couldn't get Luke out of my head for this
Did you
role.
tell him that? Because I don't know how I would respond to that if someone was like, you look so much like Bundy.
I'm gonna show you guys. I know this is weird over like a podcast, but I actually made.
No, we do a visual element too. This is all. Oh my God.
Oh, that's cool.
That is awesome.
See it, but it's all these. So I made that little thing, and I did show it to him, and he of course was like, that's traumatizing. So you're totally right. He was not thrilled to see that. But I think I made that actually, like, I didn't put it all together until after he was already on board. But basically we offered him the role and he turned it down, which was fine. That happens a lot. But we have friends in common. And so I said to him, I emailed him and I said, listen, I totally respect your not wanting to play Bundy. Like, can we just meet and chat? Because I've been a fan of yours, and I just want to let you know what my perspective is on the movie and what my approach is going to be. And so we met, and we ended up really getting along and having a good friendship and having a really interesting conversation about the very nature of making movies like this. What is it that we're doing? And I was able to convince him. I said, look, because he said, what is my mom going to say when I tell her I'm playing Bundy? And I said, tell her you're helping female filmmakers. I said, tell her how hard it is for women. Like 2% of movies are directed by women or something. I said, tell her that you're wanting to, bring some gender balance to the film industry. And so he laughed and said, okay, I'll tell my mom that. So yeah, he did eventually agree to come on, because I think he understood that this wasn't about titillation or really reveling in the gore or recreations of his crimes. I was never interested in that. That's been done before, and it's not where my interest lies. So
I like that line that Elijah's character had where he was like, don't show me the crime scene photos, I want to see the psychological profile. I found that to be really fascinating.
Yeah, that was a true thing that Bill said.
Amber, when a director is making a movie about a fictional serial killer, whether it's Jonathan Demme or David Fincher or Michael Mann, they can kind of go nuts. They can kind of get creative and have flourish and do whatever they want to do. When you're dealing with a real killer who therefore had real victims in this world, it's a little bit more complicated. Obviously, you want to be respectful. You don't want to be, overly, flourishy when dealing with certain elements of it. I'm sort of curious, is there, for lack of a better word, is there a danger in making a movie like this too entertaining? Is there a balance between hey, you're making a movie and you need to keep our attention versus look, this happened and there are families of the victims that are very much still out there that you have to be respectful towards?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it's definitely a danger for sure. And I think that in as much as I can say, there are too many Bundy movies, we're obsessed with this, I'm completely as guilty as the next person. I also made a Bundy movie. So it's a really complicated issue. It was really important to me to deal with the concept of the victims in some way that felt respectful, didn't feel saccharine or like it was taking advantage in any way, which is why I did the thing of adding, inserting the victims essentially into the narrative, even though they weren't present then, literally, but just inserting them into the narrative in other ways. Those background actors, like I said, we had them dressing, they were dressed and made up to look like actual victims in outfits that they had really worn. And, but yeah, it's, if a victim's family were ever to come out with the argument of, why are you always drawing so much attention to this person who brought so much pain? All I can say is you're completely right. They're completely right, and I am completely guilty of that, and I would hate to ever think that I was adding to anybody else's pain, by making this film. At the same time, you're right in what you said. This is an industry. It's an entertainment industry. We're here to entertain, and we make movies about things that people are interested in. And people are interested in Bundy, and they're interested in serial killers. And I like to think that they're interested, not always because of nefarious reasons. I think of it as, when you're driving on the freeway and you see a car accident, we all rubberneck and turn to look. I think there's actually something really kind of special and beautiful about that. And I think it's that we're worried about other people. We're worried about, yes, our own pain, but it's also really human connection. Watching somebody else in pain it's hard and beautiful, and also makes us feel much more connected to our mortality, And so I think there's something in that, in the whole sort of thriller, horror, serial killer genre, I think there is something sweet and kind, as well. It's not just about, people who like to watch gore. Certainly there's all sorts of people who are fans of all kinds of things, but I also think that there are people who just care about human life, like we all do. Am I making any sense? When if you see a car accident on the side of the road, it's not. I think we're all looking because we think, oh my God, there's a human being in pain there. We're not looking because we're like, I want to see someone smashed in and bloody. It's not a excited thing. It's like, oh God, that poor human, that poor other human. And so I think there's that element in this genre as well. But again, like I said, that doesn't mean that there isn't also a kind of negative side to this. And it doesn't mean that I'm not also guilty of exploiting whatever it is our society's interest in this is. I mean, I'm definitely trying to ask the question in the movie, why do we know Bundy's name and we don't know the victims' names?
Mhm.
Why are there 20 movies about Bundy and not 20 movies about the victims?
Mhm.
I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I certainly wanted to ask the question.
Amber, we have a lot of up and coming filmmakers who listen to our show to hear these interviews from directors, and so I want to ask a technical question. There are huge chunks of your film that are extremely compelling, but they're just two men having a conversation over a table. Can you talk about the challenge as a director of coming up with new and fresh ways to just shoot a conversation and to still keep it compelling?
Yeah, so it was really important to me that room be actually like, a real interrogation room. At one point, someone was like, let's put sconces on the walls. And I was like, sconces on the wall? There's no interrogation room that has sconces on the wall. So I wanted the room to be authentic. But what that essentially meant was like, we've got one light. It's above their heads. That's what interrogation rooms look like. They're different now. Some, there's often ones that have all the neon lighting and stuff, or the fluorescent lighting. But so that sort of authenticity of the space, time period was really important to me. But yeah, certainly I was like, okay, two guys for hours on end, in a room, nothing else, no one else comes in and out, nothing really, happens.
Right.
But then I remembered, I was like, the human body and the human face is really imminently watchable. And especially with the actors that we have, Elijah and Luke, like they're just, I could watch them read the phone book. They're both so interesting looking, so compelling. They really draw you in. That really, put me at ease. So casting is part of it, right? Cast interesting people, cast good actors, cast people with compelling faces. And then the other part of it is that there's so much you can do with lighting and with camera. For us, we took the approach of there's these 4 different times that they meet in the room. Their relationship changes. The first time they meet, it's all about Bill is trying to figure out who is Bundy, like who is this guy really? So I was like, okay, well, it's very clear to me then. Bundy's obscured. We're seeing him under the arm. We're seeing him under the table. We're seeing only like half his face or 3/4 of his face. His eyes are not completely lit. There's so many ways to make it visually representative of what is going on kind of in terms of the subtext of the film. And then, as the conversations continue, we worked our way, with the visual language of the film towards the final scene, which was just, really intimate close-ups, because at that point, they'd been friends for 6 years. They know each other really intimately. They've shared so much about each other. Bundy is no longer, opaque in any way. And so then we're like really seeing him clearly up close. We're getting a lot more like texture of skin, pores, eyelashes, that kind of thing. And much more frontal, more him centered in the frame. Right. And the scenes in the middle when they're becoming alike each other, I was like, well, let's, basically Bill is asking the question, can I be like Bundy? Like, are we similar? And so that's why I did the visual, the merging of the two of them.
Right. Thank you very much.
Amber, I want to ask you a question about Bundy that I've actually always kind of wondered myself, which is what was it about him that attracted so many different people? I mean, you never, the sort of stories you hear about him in terms of how he drew people toward him, you never hear about Ed Gein or John Wayne Gacy or Dahmer, but there was something about Bundy, even like at his trial, people were there, and it kind of goes into the whole weird sort of celebrity angle of how people even treated him when he was sort of going through the whole trial process. I'm sort of curious, having done so much research and gone through this whole process of understanding sort of who he was, what was it about him compared to other serial killers that have captured our attention that really drew people toward him?
There's so many answers to that question. I mean, the first one is that interest begets interest, right? So it's like if we talk about there's interest in him, then there's going to be more interest in him.
Sure.
Like it builds, like in the way that popularity and celebrity builds. There's interest in the Kardashians, and there's people that hate that there's interest in the Kardashians, which then makes more interest. It's the same kind of effect for Bundy. I think that originally, like organically, the fact that he was just a very sort of average, kind of pleasant looking guy. I mean, I don't think he was a male model, as sometimes people portray him to be. I think he was attractive.
Yeah, they say
stunning.
Good looking all the time, and I'm not necessarily like the judge on that, but every time I see pictures, I go like, that guy? Like that?
I mean, he's fine looking, but I think that's the thing. So a lot of serial killers, for example, the Night Stalker, some people like that, you'd look at them and you'd go, oh yeah, I would definitely cross the other side of the street if that person was walking. Like they have a very, I'm forgetting the guy in Florida, the really tall, just very weird looking, like almost antisocial, never had any facial expressions, that guy. So there's a lot of them that are just visually people that you would be scared of if you encountered them late at night. And Bundy wasn't that. He just looked like a normal guy. And I think I don't think of him as this like incredibly smart person. I think he was smart enough, but he wasn't the brainiac that he wanted everyone to think he was. But the one thing that he did figure out was that women are socialized to be nice and to take care of people. And so he learned that, like, oh, if I have a broken arm and I can't carry my books, and I ask that young woman, she has been literally trained from birth to be kind, to be helpful, to not say no to men, to be sweet, to be likable, all that stuff. So she is much more likely to say, yes, I'll help you, to your car or whatever, than say a boy is or a man is. So he realized that. Additionally, I think that, I just think it was his way of approaching everything as like a normal everyday person that was appealing to people.
The film also brings up a really interesting concept that I don't think I've ever heard suggested in a film like this or in any other type of film, which is that the FBI doesn't actually catch people. That there are killers who sort of choose when they would like to get caught. And I was hoping that you could sort of elaborate on your opinion on that and where it sort of came from.
Well, so that's something that Bundy actually said. Those interviews with the two of them are almost all recorded verbatim conversations between Bill and Bundy. We got all of those. Bill Hagmaier was a producer on the film, and he gave us access to all of those tapes. So that was something that Bundy had actually said. Part of it is that wasn't Bill's job at the time. They were profilers. They were supposed to understand the mindset of serial killers after the fact, So Bill's job wasn't, in fact, to catch anyone. And he was trying to make that very clear to Bundy himself. He was like, I'm not here to, get you on anything or catch you. Like, I really just want to understand you and understand why, the whys and the hows and all of that. But additionally, I think when Bundy says that, he doesn't mean only the FBI. I think he meant in general, all the investigators don't really catch people. I think he thinks that if any serial killer wants to get killed, like they either are not good and they slip up, and so they're dumb and they get caught, or they eventually grow tired and want to get caught. So that's his kind of take on it. I personally disagree. I think that investigators do catch people, and I think that quite often they don't want to be caught and they get caught. And I think Bundy didn't want to get caught and got caught, because he slipped up and made an error or two. But yeah, it just depends on what department you're talking about. But I think that particularly back then in the 80s, and this department got set up, it was only 4 or 5 guys who were the first profilers, and their jobs were not to catch these people. So I don't know how that's shifted from now. I would imagine, that part of the FBI has grown quite a bit, and that now there is some sort of preemptive, trying to catch people before. That was their goal, right, of profiling, is that they could take that information and give it to investigators who are actively searching for serial killers and use it. But I don't know if there's a department of the FBI who are out there, on the streets trying to find people, or if it's more research-based.
Yeah, I just found that comment so fascinating because of the amount of time and attention that we as a culture focus on, these procedurals, these shows that are all about tracking and catching somebody, and the way that he was suggesting, like, they never really catch anybody.
One could certainly, I did talk about that with Bill at one time, and he pointed me towards a bunch of statistics, and, but certainly, I don't know enough about the statistics about that. Like, one could certainly, how much money we spend on, say, the FBI, any profiling department, investigative sides of police departments, and look at how many serial killers are actually caught versus like money spent on it. Smarter brains than mine would have to, parse that out. But
Amber, you talked about how this film is sort of unlike anything that you've done before, and there's kind of a part of you that was sort of like, okay, can I sort of tackle something like this and pull it off? And obviously you did, but I'm sort of curious, have you started looking ahead to sort of what genre is the next, like, oh, I haven't done that, but But obviously, if you were able to sort of move in this direction, you could, if you were able to zig, you can obviously zag. So I'm sort of curious, what is the next, like, can I pull this off for you?
Well, I'm attached to a comedy script, which I'm really excited about doing next. And like, as a person, I really like comedy. I watch comedy a lot. I'm a sort of jokey person. And I've done a little bit of drama, dramedies before, but I'd like to do something really, really firmly comedic. But I think for me, I'm always drawn by the story and what it's saying, and like where you can go performance wise rather than just the genre. So, I'm open to any genre depending on if the story pulls me in or not.
Sure.
Well, and to that end, Amber, and we'll wrap you up on this one. This is your first time directing, I believe, directing a feature that you didn't write prior to. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
So just talk about that transition. What was it like taking on someone else's work? Is that something that you wouldn't mind doing going forward? Or do you like being the author of the project from the very first step? If you talk about those differences, I was just very curious.
It was really fun to do. It's a lot less work when you don't have to also be the writer. I mean, I did a pass, directors that also write, they usually come in and they do a pass of the script. So like I said, I added in all the women victims and stuff. But it was great. I loved working with the writer, and, it was a really great, just group of people that, we all had similar interests and stuff. I certainly love writing. I mean, I still, I have stuff in development that I've written. I'll always write. It's always, it's like a part of me. But it's just slightly different. It's like it's also different if you are directing episodic television or if you're directing narrative film. I mean, with narrative film, you get to have a little bit more of a say, you get to have a little bit more of a voice than you do, say, if you're directing what somebody else wrote for television. So, it's just I don't know. It's just different. It just really depends. You're gonna add different amounts of your own voice depending on the project. Some projects you come on and the script is written by like 10 different people and there's not a coherent voice, and so then you're like, okay, I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna really put my voice in and kind of make it more mine. And sometimes you come in like with this one where the script is really wonderful and it's there, and you're just gonna add some frosting on the cake. And that was the experience here, but. Making a movie is always just making a movie. Each one is its own beast. They're all really different. There's going to be ups and downs about everything. And to me, the process is really fun, regardless of whether I wrote it or not.
Good. Well, we hope you get to keep doing it. And we're thrilled that people finally get a chance to see No Man of God. So, Amber, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks.
Thank you
so
so
great
much.
to speak with you guys.
Thank you so much to Amber Sealey for joining us here on ReelBlend. We're so excited to be able to bring these bonus episodes to you guys. Hopefully you got a chance to hear David Lowery as part of the main show. And then, of course, we had the director from The Night House as a bonus episode earlier this week. I know, as you guys can see from my backdrop, I'm still in Las Vegas. On next week's show, I'll bring you a lot of updates from CinemaCon. I know the guys are going to be able to finally talk about Shang-Chi. And I think that they are also seeing a very exciting film from a director who we are really hoping to get on the show. Hashtag if it happens. Is that what the kids are doing? Hashtags nowadays? I'm not quite sure. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to our bonus episode. Hope to see you guys soon. We'll check you out on the main show. Premium subscribers, we'll see you on a new episode on Monday. And as always, a pleasure spending more time with you guys together in the Blender family. So, QB!